Mr. Waterhouse here with another lesson from the field, number 3 to be exact. Today I want to talk about language and why language matters, specifically your choice of language. I jump in a lot of AMAs recently and I'm noticing what I would call a language mismatch. So let's jump in to this hot tip from the field. You really want to choose your words wisely. So specifically, remember who your target audience is. I think I mentioned this in almost every lesson that I give. Know who your target audience is. You have to speak the language and use the terms of your target audience. You can't speak super technical if you're dealing with people who aren't in crypto, for example. So rather than saying potentially NFT, you might want to say digital collectible, right? You've got to find a way to put it in terms that they can understand. Nobody is you. This is probably the biggest mistake that I've encountered recently. I've fallen victim to this myself during presentations. You can't assume that people know what you know. And as an AMA host, I often times will pause and say, hey, for the sake of the people who don't understand what that term means or who are new to the space, can you please explain what this term is? Because oftentimes when we talk about something 3, 4, 5 times, we hear the term so often that we just assume everybody else knows the term. And so sometimes it makes sense to slow down and just articulate what certain terms mean. Even if it's simple to you, it might be the first time that someone else is hearing that. It could be something as simple as, NFT, like I said earlier. It could be explaining what a wallet is. It could be talking about a pre-sale or pink sale or platform or anything like that. You want to make sure that people understand what that term means. Or if you're talking about a platform that you're going to be integrating with, you explain what that platform does, because oftentimes people will be too shy to ask what that is. They don't want to be embarrassed for not knowing what something is. And so help them out and just explain what it is. It's okay if you want to say, again, this is for the benefit of the people who may not have heard that term, but you should make a point of explaining it. And AMA hosts, if you don't see that they are explaining it, that is your opportunity to jump in and ask them to explain it or explain it yourself. The lowest common denominator, you're going to have an audience in, and even if you've got a target audience, you're going to have a mixture. You're going to have some very technical people who understand technical. You're going to have some salesy people. You're going to have some finance people. You're going to have some brand new people who don't use anything. So when I say the lowest common denominator, you don't want to use a lot of big terms like denominator. You don't want to use a lot of big terms. You want to use simple language. Keep it simple. And what I was always taught, it was to keep it high school level language. Even if you're in a boardroom talking to a bunch of executives, in that case, maybe you want to tweak it a little bit towards them, but you want to make sure that everybody is going to be able to understand the language that you're using. So I would say, scratch the boardroom executive example. I would say more writing a blog post. If you're writing a blog post, the idea is to always do it in high school level language to ensure that the maximum number of readers will understand your message. Same thing with when you're giving your pitch. Use terms that you can be sure that 90% of the people are going to understand. And lastly, don't overlook the power of metaphor and analogy. One of the things I learned in school was you can't use the word itself in the definition of the word, right? And so if someone said, hey, what is the definition of a house? And you can't say, well, the definition of a house is people live in a house, right? That's a horrible definition. You want to find other ways to explain things. So there's going to be stuff in your project that needs to be explained that people just don't get, because maybe you're coming up with a new idea or a new concept or a new way of dealing with something, and you've got to get them to understand what it is you're doing. You can try and muscle through with a very technical example or a technical walkthrough, but you're going to lose most people. What I found to be more effective is to use metaphor and analogy. Compare what you're doing to something else that is very common in another space. So if there's something similar, I'm just going to pick an industry, like in the automotive industry, then say, hey, it's like this thing. It's like the carburetor in an old school car. Or it's like when a car changes gears, this happens. It's like the differential in a car, right? Now, those are bad examples because you're expecting your audience to know what a carburetor and a differential is, but find something that is common and relatable, at least analogous to what you're doing or your technology, and compare it to that. Again, not everybody's going to get it, but more people will get it with metaphor and analogy. Don't shy away from those things because they are very powerful tools to help you drive home the point to people who otherwise are not going to understand your message. That's it. Choose your words wisely. Language matters. I'll see you at the next lesson.